Hello, I'm Nasir Khan. For over 20 years, I've worked across engineering, commercial management, expert witness appointments, mediation, and arbitration. One consistent lesson stands out. Disputes rarely start in the courtroom. They start in meeting rooms when governance slips, when risk is misunderstood, or when difficult decisions are deferred. Welcome to Common Sense, Not So Common podcast series examining risk, commercial judgment, claims, and dispute resolution. Our guest today is Ben Giaretta, Chair of the Trustees of Chartered Institute of Arbitrators, international arbitration specialist, and a respected voice in global dispute resolution. Also, congratulations, Ben, on your next chapter as a full-time arbitrator at Newman's Row. So
Thank you.
your deep technical expertise, practical judgment are ideal for this podcast because I think your role and your experience is going to be the highlight of today's discussion. And I've seen you in action. I've known you for a number of years now. The first question we start with all our guests is, do you believe common sense is common?
Well, thank you very much, Nasir, for that introduction, and thank you for inviting me onto this podcast. I suppose the obvious response to that question is, what is common sense? And I suppose you're the person who's been doing the Common Sense podcast. What do you think is common sense?
You can't flip the question back to me. So first thing is, we'll discuss what common sense is definitely throughout. But as a general perception, do you believe common sense is common or is it not so common?
Well, I mean, I would say that decision making is complicated. Human interaction is complicated. The opportunities that present themselves to make a decision based on common sense are actually pretty limited. So in that sense, and also I do believe that people make mistakes. People are affected by biases. People are, even with, if they have the right intentions, often lack enough information. So, I don't think it's common, actually. I don't think it's common at all. It's the short answer to your question.
No, that's brilliant because, I mean, the way I look at it and at your question, what is common sense? Is it gut feel? Is it instinct? Is it what makes you feel comfortable? Is it what feels right? Sometimes, your heart tells you something else, your brain tells you another thing. So
Yeah.
it's an amalgamation and a combination of all these various different things. So with that, tell me about a time when common sense helped you make the right decision. Give me an example.
Well, and it also takes us on to our relationships with the decisions that we've made. How do we look back and say, oh, I made that decision with common sense? And whether there are decisions that I look back on and think, those are terrible decisions. but maybe they were right decisions in the time, with the information available to me. On the other hand, I look back on decisions which I'm really pleased I took, but actually I've only realized they were good decisions with hindsight. I think I'm happy in the place I've landed up my career. And so in that light, I'm very glad I took the decision to go into arbitration. I think that decision to enter a field which played to my strengths was a good one, and showed common sense. But whether that's just the benefit of hindsight, I'm not sure.
Well, it's very fitting because what I wanted to discuss you was hindsight and common sense.
Yeah.
Whether if common sense was available, but you ignored it, and you now think in hindsight, oh, I wish I had done it differently.
Yeah, I mean, I think there have been decisions that I've taken. I mean, the decisions that stick in my mind, of course, are the big decisions. I mean, I'm sure there have been all sorts of decisions like buying a piece of technology or whatever that I didn't do correctly or lacked common sense, but I just can't remember them because they just weren't important. Whereas the important decisions about career, about life, about where you live, and all these other things, they stick in your mind. But it's difficult to get your head around whether those were good decisions or bad decisions. And I know I'm being a bit evasive.
No, you're not. It's definitely not generalization. And it's definitely not from that perspective. I mean, I look at, everything we do, there is like, certain aspects to it. Our work, our personal life, if we play a sport, and then we apply common sense in all these different departments in a very different way.
Yeah.
So in sports, for example, you do something and then you make a decision. Oh my God, I should have done it differently. I shouldn't have passed, or I should have crossed. Or if you're playing cricket, why did I hoik it, cross batted shot? I should have played with a straight bat and things like that. So I think those are some of the things. I mean, in education, I'll think about, I enrolled on a course and I thought to myself, why did I not do it 10 years ago? It would have helped so much in my career. So it's those type of things. So it's not really in terms of hindsight, like you've made a proper error or something. It's very much like, oh, I wish I had done it earlier. It's that scenario.
Mm. Well, even that, I mean, your view on a decision that's passed can change over time. I'm
Yes.
thinking now about a decision I did 10 years ago. I have one particular view, but in 10 years' time, when I'm looking back at it from a viewpoint of 20 years, I might have a different feeling. So it's very
Yes.
difficult. These are very, very, very.
Exactly. And that's
very
why it's a very complicated subject, common sense in that sense.
Have you read Stuart Sutherland's book, Irrationality? The
No.
title is Irrational. It's a very good book. And Sutherland was a psychologist. And his starting point is that human beings act irrationally. We're so affected by cognitive biases that almost any decision we make is going to be irrational, because we're affected by so many biases. And he says that we need to make conscious efforts to have a common sense decision, have a rational decision. And his suggested method is to have a list of all the factors and give them that are relevant to a particular decision, and to give them a different weighting, and then weigh them all up, almost like a mathematical equation. But even that, he says, well, that's a very imperfect method. But it's probably a better method than anything else, considering all the biases we have. So in a way, it goes back to your original question about what is there common sense. I mean, I don't think there is, or to think there is, it takes a lot of effort to get to that, which frankly many people are just not willing.
So let's talk about from a disputes perspective. So after all your years in dispute resolution, what do you think, or what do you believe has been the most common cause of disputes?
I think that to my mind, the number one cause is lack of communication. It's not the only cause. I mean, with other things that happen, but the number of times I've seen people get into a situation where they just don't pick up the phone to the person they're dealing with. They don't check in with that person. They don't have an ongoing dialogue with that person. And then that snowballs into a big dispute. I've also seen many disputes where people start off communicating, then get the lawyers involved and put up the barricades and get into a big, long dispute. And then almost the next time that they have a proper conversation is in the hearing room, or maybe in a mediation. And at that point, sort of the scales drop from their eyes and they realize they could have resolved this much easier another way. So I do think that a lack of communication is the major thing. Now, I'm not saying that people turn their back on communication. Sometimes there are barriers in the way of communication that they just can't overcome themselves. Structural, legal, a whole bunch of other things. But it is the case that many times people are unwilling to communicate or afraid to communicate or just irrationally fear communication. So I think lack of communication is my number one.
Okay. Very interesting because I've written on this recently quite a lot in terms of expectations not being aligned, warnings not given or received, concerns not escalated, assumptions are made, not communicated. Again, all of these are where people are just trying to avoid difficult conversations. And and that becomes the crux of it in terms of communication.
Yeah, so and I'll also add the time factor. The time factor is very
Yes.
important as well. I mean, one day you could be at the right mm, uh, factors, right circumstances available for communication, but the next day things may change, or the next year, month or year, things may change. So things change over time. People change over time. Organizations
Yeah.
change over time.
Absolutely. I think that point is also very relevant that people change over time because in in my similar experience, I think what I have seen a lot is that most disputes do not arise because people failed to recognize the problem or they communicated in a different way. I think the challenge that I have seen quite a lot is that disputes arise because the process through which it had to be communicated wasn't followed.
Yes, that's true. There's very often process failures, or failures in the process. I mean, in the sense of
Yeah,
the structure of the process may be wrong, but yes.
I mean, I was teaching negotiation training yesterday to 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 some board execs in Manchester, and the first question I asked them was, "You have an orange, imaginary orange, split them into groups of two." I said, um, "Negotiate. How are you going to split it?" One person said to the other, "I'll just give you half. Take half. Done." 5 seconds, 10 seconds. It was 12 of them, six groups. About 5, 10 seconds, they said, "Yeah, we've settled." I'm like, "Ooh, okay. Did you ask what was the requirement of that orange to that person? Maybe that person just needed the seed to grow the next, orange tree. Maybe they just needed the peel. Maybe they just needed the juice. What was the need? Did you even communicate? Did you even ask of what the issue is? What do you want? You've just gone straight into conclusion, settlement done." And that's one of the things I'm finding at the moment a lot in my mediation practice as well is people are just jumping into conclusion without actually understanding the interests, the objectives. What exactly do I want the outcome to be? I haven't even listened to the other party and I've just made an assumption. Happy days. You take half, I take half, and that's about it. And I think that is a lot we are finding in these projects and disputes and things as well. Is the failure to communicate or having unrealistic expectations or assumptions. And I- I- how do you see people, when they are just making assumptions as naturally occurring to them?
Well, I mean, entirely agree with that about the assumptions of about other people. But I would add to that, people often don't understand properly what their own expectations are, what they themselves are looking for out of a dispute. I did a dispute a few years ago, an arbitration where the party, um, their what they look to get out of this dispute change over the course of the arbitration. I mean, they flipped from one thing to the next. They never really, and we did a mediation, we had several attempts at negotiation, but they never really got to grips with what they really wanted to get out of the arbitration. Um, so, uh, yes, I mean, people have wrong assumptions about other people, but they're wrong assumptions about themselves as well.
That is so amazing. I mean, one of the key things I was looking at yesterday was the so because it was a charity, Muslim charity that I was in. to work with. So they wanted to know the prophetic way of negotiation. And I thought I won't just end it there. I'll actually do a comparison, the prophetic way of negotiation with Harvard negotiation models. And they were just so similar because they focused on interests, they focused on the long-term success, and very much, I think the to summarize it, they're both very principled negotiation methods. So having the, active listening and sympathy and all those kind of things to come into place where you are actually trying the parties to save face and create value, and having a balance in place. So the sophisticated ethical and collaborative style provides you with that. Now, wouldn't it be amazing if we had that embedded with common sense in everything that we do? Empathy.
Yeah, and of course, what I find, one of the real values of mediation, I find, is actually, from what you've just described there, the opportunity to sit someone down and say, how is the best way to approach this? What's the best way in which you can get value out of this? Now that session you just described, that discussion you just described, doesn't happen normally. I mean, imagine, take the same people you were speaking to and put them in a normal business environment where they've got 1,000 emails they have to deal with, and they have to rush between meetings and this and that, and there are all sorts of personal concerns that are worrying them or whatever. They're not going to have the time and space to be able to have that conversation. So I often find the real value of mediation is actually taking a party, sitting them down in a room, and getting them to contemplate themselves, if you like, getting them to think about what is their real interests. When people teach meditation, they say, well, the hardest thing to do is actually sitting with yourself, and be able to cope with the thoughts in your own head. And you need to get beyond that in order to really get into meditation. And I think it's the same with mediation, that you need to be able to sit down and cope with the thoughts in your own head, and cope with what it is you're looking to get out of this situation. And then you deal with communicating with the other side, which, as you said, comes with a whole bunch of other challenges.
Going back to the point you made earlier about communication, and it's the assumptions what the other party actually wants,
Yes.
and then, as you said, the party sometimes themselves don't know what they want. And
Yeah, exactly.
and that's usually my question in mediation. The first thing I ask, well, not generally first thing, but there comes a point when I usually ask them, what is the outcome you're looking for? And then if they know the outcome they're looking for, I generally try and approach it. Is that a fair outcome you're looking for? Or, to just, like the CIR personalities we looked at, you want to be just a shark and I want to take everything, or the other person being a teddy bear, I'm going to give it all. As you said, meditation, contemplation. And I think that's one of the beauties of mediation. When you go leave one party, go to the other room and basically say, I will leave you for you to think about this question, or, how you will approach it. And then I'll come back in 15,
Yes.
20 minutes, half an hour.
Yeah. Obviously, I'm not saying that people have to meditate
Yes,
in a
yes.
mediation, but the point about thinking about where they are, where they want to be, that space in a
Yes.
mediation is very important.
I think that space, and yes, it's not just contemplation. It's about having to look at how do we want to move forward, because I
Yeah.
think that's one of the fundamentals. Are we still finding it hard with clients to try and explain to them the difference between mediation and arbitration?
I think that's right. I think there is a people struggle to understand all the different methods of dispute resolution, which is a failure on our part, actually, in terms of not being able to explain it, but also a failure on the fact, just a reflection of the fact that people who are not in the disputes world don't think about it and don't want to think about it. So they only get to grips with it when they really have to. Let me
Yeah.
tell you another story. I was working for an oil company once. Sorry, not oil company. They are an energy service provider. They provide services to the energy industry. And I wasn't involved in this particular dispute in a big way, but I knew the general counsel, and it was an arbitration. And she said to me, we've got this mediation coming up. And I need to prepare our executives for this mediation. And so can you come in and just spend a bit of time with these people as a neutral to talk through what the mediation involves? So I wasn't involved in the dispute. So it was very much like a mock mediation. And I went along and we had a few sessions. We lasted the whole afternoon, talking through the dispute, talking through the mediation. At the end of which, the most senior person in the room, he wasn't quite the CEO, but he was very, very senior in the company. He said to me, thank you very much for that training. I really understand what mediation is now. I really understand what the difference is between mediation and arbitration. But he also said to me, he said, this is the first time that I've understood what this dispute is about. Now he was in charge of this dispute, and he was very senior in the company. And this dispute had been going on for, I think it was a year and a half by that point. And it's only then that he actually understood what it was about. And that shows you sort of the, and it's not a criticism of him. He was a very capable, intelligent individual, but a very busy man, working in lots of projects across the world. Didn't have the time to sit down and talk things through. Also, was receiving information about this dispute that was filtered through many different people, each of whom had their own interests in what they were telling him. This is, again, the real value of the mediation, to be able to sit down and really get to grips with these things. I don't think that answers your question, by the way. I think I went off on a tangent.
I think that's absolutely fair to support mediation in that sense, because it highlights parties' position, and instead of always just looking backwards, they did this, she did this, he did that, we're actually looking at how do we move forward and what the outcome needs to look like. And I think that highlights, the one of the benefits of mediation. Where I was going through is still in some mediations, you're still getting a lot of the parties to actually say, so what do you think, mediator? I'm not here to judge it as an arbitrator. I'm not here to, make an award or make a decision. And I've had this discussion actually last week with a party who wanted to appoint me as a mediator. And their question was, so you're not going to help us decide anything? And I found it really, really, for me, it was a really tricky discussion.
Yeah, I mean, people classify things by being adjacent to something else. So they classify arbitration as being adjacent to litigation, mediation as being adjacent to arbitration and litigation. So they think, well, and it's often people by the same individuals. So they're saying, well, you are my disputes lawyer. Sorry, I know you're not, but they go to their dispute lawyer and say, please now take us to this mediation, or they point to dispute lawyer as a mediator. So they think, well, this is going to be much the same as going to court or what you see on TV, whatever. And actually, in many ways, you would say mediation is more adjacent to therapy than to mediation. I mean, again, a therapist doesn't say, this is your problem. They sit there listening and nudge you in the right direction, help you, talk things through with you. And that's much more what a mediator does than the perception.
Yes, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, the example that you gave for the executive to actually understand the nature and the root cause of the dispute for them to make an informed decision.
Yes.
Because what mediation is doing is helping the parties understand and actually just filter out, okay, fine, these are, say 3 out of 10 issues that we actually can't agree on, but these
Yeah.
7 at least we are close by, so let's sort these 7 out first and then we can look at these 3 in a different way.
Yeah. And the options available to them as well. It's like your example of the orange with the peel and the juice. If in any lots of dispute, there may be many different options.
Absolutely. So in that way, as we know, we've heard so much over the last couple of years, arbitration almost in danger of becoming too similar to litigation in terms of its length, in terms of its cost. So as the chair of trustees of CIR, as leading the profession, what's the view from the institute's perspective?
Um, well, this is maybe another lawyerly answer. Of course, it depends what you mean by arbitration. It depends what you mean by litigation. It depends what you're comparing. Arbitration is an umbrella term that covers lots of different approaches to dispute resolution. Yes, there's been a theoretical framework that's been built up over the last 70 years or so since the New York Convention. Yes, there are various common practices that have been developed, promoted by organizations like the IBA, etc. But still, there is a lot of variation across the world in arbitrations. And still, there's lots of different cultures of arbitration. And still, there's lots of different comparators to arbitration. I mean, if you're doing arbitration in Nigeria, for example, I give Nigeria as an example because I was speaking to some Nigerian lawyers a few days ago who were telling me about the endemic delays in the Nigerian court system. Now, their comparison between the arbitration and the litigation that they would encounter is a different comparison compared to the arbitration that you might encounter in the UK compared to the courts here. And the courts here, for all their faults, and I appreciate the courts are underfunded and whatever, generally work very well, and they're staffed with good people, and they're relatively efficient. And comparing arbitration to that is very different to comparing arbitration to the courts in Nigeria, arbitration to the courts in India or Pakistan or wherever. So it really depends what you're talking about. There's a greater good point here as well. I mean, we have to think, well, what is the greater good? What is the purpose of arbitration? Its purpose is to resolve a dispute and but also to resolve it via a third party giving a decision. So that's what distinguishes, of course, from mediation. But it's a third party sitting outside the court system. And that's what distinguishes
Yes.
it from litigation. Those are the main elements of it. And those are pretty high level points. And then you can have a whole variation within that as to how you have the best system. And there are many faults with arbitration, of course, but also there are many advantages.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I think there has been a lot of change in everything, in litigation, in arbitration, and and the procedures, the rules, making it easy from that perspective. There is, procedure length as well, that the award must come before, a certain time period. All of these things combined are making effectively for a quicker decision. Courts, we know, sometimes if it's a smaller matter, you may not have a hearing for another 2 years, 3 years. I mean, that was one of the reasons why we launched the branch in Pakistan, because there was about 2.5 million civil cases pending in the courts. even if they don't have any new cases, it would have taken them over 27 years to dispense those.
Mm.
So what arbitration has done is, and mediation has done, ADR generally has taken some of the burden, of course, not all of the burden. I mean, we've got great example from Turkey, since, mediation became one of the key areas from the courts to basically dispatch, right, you guys go and do mediation. We are seeing that here, the Churchill orders came and everything else in the UK from mediation perspective. I think it's heading in the right direction in that regard.
Yes. I mean, it's heading in the right direction, but of course, we'll never reach a direction because of this is constantly evolving. We're never going
Yes.
to get to a point where things are perfect. Yeah, I mean, I think that having a better understanding of different methods, having a better people in these who are responsible for these different methods, having better systems in place. These are all good things, and these are all happening. But we're never going to have a perfection. There's always going to be things to criticize these systems for, these methods for. So, um,
So coming to your other role, you've been involved with various different institutions for a very, very long time. And I was just reading through your amazing journey at the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. So you first just started with the Singapore branch, then the London branch, then became, I mean, through various roles, trustees, and now the chair of trustees. Well, first, congratulations. It has been a very, very, it takes a lot of time and effort and a lot of volunteering, which people
yeah,
sometimes don't understand because
yeah,
these are all volunteer roles,
yes.
and people do it for for giving. So Ben, tell me about your journey into all of these things.
Well, I've always regarded arbitration, dispute resolution, um, the profession as a community. And my instinct has always been to connect with other people within the community. And I first got involved in the CIRB in Singapore, where also there is a very strong sense of community. It's a cultural thing in Singapore. So it was natural for me to be involved in the CIRB there. And then after that, when I relocated back to the UK, I got involved in the CIRB here. But even back here, I've still felt the same sense of community, the sense that it's important to be connected with other people who are working in the same profession. It's important to be promote that community. It's important to break down misconceptions as you've described. It's important to raise standards as you've described as well. So all these factors have kept me involved in the CIR over the years. And it's an organization that I'm proud of. I think it has done good, and it continues to do good. It's not perfect, like many organizations. It's not perfect. There are ways to improve it. There will always be ways to improve it. But an organization it's a pretty unique organization that's spread across the whole world, that is respected across the whole world, that promotes dispute resolution and a social good across the whole world. It is something to be proud of. It's not Save the Children. It's not Medicine Sans
No.
Frontières. It's not doing that level of good. But it's in its own way, it does a lot of good. And I've seen the good it does in terms of connecting people, in terms of promoting dispute resolution across the world. So it's something that I'm very pleased I've been involved in over the years, and hope to be involved in for a little bit longer. I know my journey in the CR will come to an end at some point, because that's just the way of these things. And that's a good thing as well, because there has to be a rotation, new people coming through. But I'm glad I've done my little bit towards the organization over the years.
No, that's brilliant. That's fantastic. And thank you very much, because I know as a volunteer it takes a lot of effort. So well done. Congratulations on
Thank
that,
you.
on doing what you have done and continue to do so.
And thank you to you as well for your involvement.
Thank you. I mean, so as you mentioned, the community, of course, arbitration, mediation, the whole ADR sector or dispute resolution, we are one big community. What are you seeing now as the development continues to be? Are our major opportunities or major challenges facing the profession over the next 3, 5, 10 years?
I mean, these haven't really changed over. I mean, I've been involved in dispute resolution for almost 30 years now, and the challenges and opportunities haven't really changed in the broadest sense. I mean, they've always been about delivering the best service for the lowest price, doing it quickly, doing it efficiently, all these other things. The only things that have changed is the context in which these things have happened, the shifts, and these things are outside of our control, and they're more societal shifts. Technology, the rise of technology, obviously, the way that different economies have shifted over the years, different centers of economic growth, economic importance across the world, and the way that that brings different cultural aspects into it as well, and the way that the dispute resolution community now has to provide the best service, provide a quality product, but bear in mind these societal shifts. That's changed over time. So, I mean, to be more specific about it, we do have to deliver a product, deliver arbitration awards more quickly. We do have to do that. We do have to be more efficient. We do have to be more professional about it. We also have to be more international about these things. I mean, I remember back in the 90s, people were much more focused on their own national cultures and own national arbitrations. And these days, one has to be much more international. One has to be able to deal with parties from Pakistan and Nigeria. I mean, take two examples. You're as likely to be, as an international arbitration practitioner, you're as likely to be dealing with a dispute between a Pakistani party and a Nigerian party as you are to be dealing with parties between two English parties.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's the whole purpose of international. So, I mean, that you mentioned technology. So, when are we going to be replaced by AI?
Well, I don't think as a dispute system, we're never going to be replaced by AI. Well, never say never. It's a very. I would be very, very surprised if we were entirely replaced by AI, because at that point you are replacing humans in a human system. I mean, you would equally say, well, we should have AIs running companies, AIs running governments, that sort of thing. So I don't think it's going to happen that we have AI arbitrators, but we will have increasing uses of AI in the different aspects of what we're doing. So AI analysis of documents, AI analysis of, making the system more efficient, which is
Yeah,
always a good thing. And in
yeah,
ways we can't anticipate at the moment. But equally, there will be disadvantages to it as well. Something that was pointed out to me the other day, and this is a very interesting point, is that AI may actually increase the number of disputes out there, because the way that AI, at least the AI models we have at the moment, the way that they respond to questions is, generally speaking, to give a positive answer. They're people pleasers, if you like. And very often business people who have a dispute, they may plug in the elements of their dispute into a AI software, and the software will give an answer which is positive, was saying, you have a claim here, you should pursue this claim. And in a way, so they're not filtered with an element of pragmatism, an element of realism that you get from a real life lawyer.
Yes,
um, the,
definitely.
the AI has not been there, done that, and suffered the consequences. They don't come with an element of world weariness that perhaps someone's been involved in the disputes for world for a long time has. So actually, and if you have all parties coming into a dispute with a much more positive spin on things they've got out of AI, that actually may mean there are more disputes out there, and it might bizarrely become more inefficient or less efficient when you've got people who are so convinced of their answers because Claude or ChatGPT has told them they have the right answer. So there are all sorts of unexpected consequences from technology that we don't
Yes.
really know about yet.
I mean, that's, one of the fundamental things, because there are systems in place. I mean, we've been using, e-discovery, document management systems and other things from an AI perspective is really, really cool. And the thing where I'm questioning it is, we often talk about common sense as a combination of experience, judgment, context, and human understanding, which you said that humans can't be replaced by AI in that sense. But AI can process huge amounts of information and identity patterns, where it can sift through, say, 70,000 files in a couple of seconds and let you know, well, this thing happened on X date, this thing happened on Y date, and goes through that. But the issue is, I think, where your point is, and comes back to the crux of my issue here. Yes, it can do all of that, but it can never truly apply common sense.
Yeah, yeah, that's very true. That's very true. What a real danger for us as a community is actually not the AI being as good as the good arbitrators. It's
Yeah.
the danger is actually the AI being better than the bad arbitrators. Because we do have arbitrators who, for want of a better word, are bad arbitrators. And that may not, I don't mean that in a moral sense. I mean that in the sense of people who are lazy, people who don't pay enough attention, don't get to grips with things, or their diaries are too busy, whatever. And they could produce poor awards as a result. And maybe that AI, even if it's lacks common sense, as you say, as I agree with it, then maybe they're better than that. Parties may then say, well, rather than having a bad arbitrator, we should have a okay AI system. It may not be as good as a good arbitrator, but it's better than the bad arbitrator.
Yeah. I mean, I will relate this and your first point: communication, relationship, AI, more facts, more figures, more, you know, analysis in that sense, more logic. And that's where humans and AI will always have that issue, because as relationships break down in a dispute and things don't apply as they should have, a human person may apply common sense in a different way to AI, which will just go into 2 plus 2 was 4. It can never be 22.
Well, that's right, but there's a spin on that, which is you can also program your AI to convey the information different ways. So it could be 2 plus 2 plus 4 equals 4, as you say, but you could program you could change your settings on the AI and say, please convey that information in a emotional, excited way. So actually, you might end up with the same answer, 2 plus 2 plus 4, but it's sort of the AI gives you an answer which is full of emotion, and that triggers your emotions as well. And or you could program it to say, oh, please come out with it in a very common sense sort of way. So it might appear to be common sense, but it's not actually common sense. Just as it might appear to be full of emotion, it's not actually full of.
I think where you're coming it is, there will come a point where we will be able to code in relationships, commercial realities, emotions, and perceptions.
Well, I think that's right as well. But I was actually making a slightly different point, which is that currently you could go into an AI system and ask and change the settings so that it conveys the information in a different way. But you're right that potentially. But I mean, the problem with there's enormous limitations in that, because the AI system is only as good as the data it can draw. It currently can draw lots of information from the internet, which is fantastic. But then it doesn't have all the other information in a dispute. The interactions, if you are a party involved in a dispute and you've been into a meeting with the other side and sat down with them and for an hour or so and talked through the issues, there's a whole bunch of data there that you've gathered in your own head in terms of how the person behaves, how the person on the other side reacts to things, which the AI system doesn't have. It can never have. It's got to be a combination of all these things. The AI system needs to go away and pull up all the information that's got in databases about previous cases, etc., etc. But that has to be married up with the information that you gathered yourself from your
Yes.
interactions with the party on the other side.
Right. I'm gonna ask you one final question. It's for me and for a lot of other people I know. How do we increase or develop our common sense?
Well, a lot of it comes from keeping your eyes open, being more aware about what's going on in the world. A lot of it comes over time, building up an awareness, building up a database, for want of a better word, of how people interact in the world. From reading as well. I mean, I think there's a lot just comes out of reading from different points of view, reading from different approaches over the centuries. You mentioned the prophetic way of approach to the negotiation. I mean, that word prophetic. I mean, there's a weight behind that word, and there's centuries of common sense behind that. And yes, I mean, there are cultural elements to it as well, but at its core, there is a deep well of wisdom there. So in terms of building up our own common sense, we need to be able to draw on that well. We need to be able to think, well, and this is how things have been done in the past, and this is what we can learn from it. And as well as, and then combining that with our knowledge of the world today and how things work today. I think patience is a very important part of this as well. I mean, sitting down, if you're trying to apply common sense in a particular situation, sitting down and listening, sitting down and being patient, sitting down and thinking, well, this is the right way of doing things. It is very, very important.
I can't thank you enough, for being here. Your honesty, insight, everything from, common sense, communication or lack of, arbitration, leadership, volunteering, giving, the importance of, the community of dispute resolution practitioner. I've really, really enjoyed the conversation, and my sincere thanks to you and for sharing your wisdom, experience, and common sense with us all.
Well, thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure to be here. And thank you for inviting me again onto this podcast.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Ben. Until next time. See you soon.
Bye.